Perfect. Ended stream a little prematurely. We're going to see another one coming up here. Oh. One moment. Hey folks, the game had commanders not spectators not allowed. Yeah, beautiful. All right, great, perfect. All right, you two have a great game. Perfect. Here we are. There we are. Alrighty, going back up. This one without hands revealed, as it was supposed to be. We're see Arabella showing off against Spider-Man 2099. Spider-Man here is the one of the new decks that we're seeing here. We've not had much experience with yet in this format. Seems to be a very strong tempo aggro deck. We're going to see Wooded Foothills, Thundering Falls. Seems like no turn 1 plays from either player. See that Foothills? Probably just grab the Elegant Parlor. Yep, Surveil lands all around. See a Den of the Bugbear hit the field. This is one of my personal favorite creature lands in this format. Can make goblins every turn. And we're going to see that turn 2 Ajani hit the field, it's looking like. That's one of the stronger turn 2 plays out of Arabella. We're going to have to see how we keep up with this. See a command tower hit. And just a pass, very interesting. Not sure exactly what that means. Could be holding up a counter spell. 3 damage a turn isn't too much pressure. Could be holding up something like a Braid, any sort of 2-mana red removal to take out a Johnny here. Receive Voice of Victory cast, so whatever's being held up is going to work. We're going to see a snap on the cat token. That'll work to nerf a lot of what a Johnny's actually capable of, and then a mana drain on that Voice of Victory. Pretty good response here. Snap is a very powerful card for specifically a Johnny, making it functionally just a 1-2 without any other cats. Of course, we could see something like Ocelot Pride dropped to turn that card back on. We're going to see a Ledger Shredder hit the field, and a Lelia cast, trigger a Connive. That's the power of turn 2 mana drain for sure, just dumping out 5 mana worth of threats here. Dumping a mountain in the graveyard. We see a Swords on the Lelia. Heading back over to Abbi. So an Arabella cast here wouldn't be bad. If there's another spell to follow it up, it's stronger, but that also triggers the Ledger Shredder. One of the better cards for here would be Broadside Bombardiers, I would think. If that can just attack, throw the Ajani at the Ledger Shredder, and get in for 2, while threatening a lot of that consistent damage, that'd be very powerful. See a Gonjo hit the field, an Arabella cast, and then just a pass. So that could just be playing around giving Ledger Shredder Connives, holding a 2-drop in hand. But more likely it seems that it's either removal or 3 mana threats. We're going to see Ledger Shredder get in for 1. A Light Up the Stage scent. I imagine we're going to see this into the Floodmaw on the Arabella. Yep, play that River Pyre Verge. And we are going to see Spider-Man 2099 cast. That'll trigger the Shredder. Spider-Man 2099 is a 2/3 double strike vigilance. You have to you can't cast it in your first 3 turns of the game. And at your end step, if you cast a spell from exile, it gets to throw damage around. It seems like we're just going to end step with the Spider-Man trigger going directly at Abby's face. That's interesting. Not choosing to clear the blocker in the Ajani. And we are still going to see this into the Flood Maw being able to be cast for a good while here. The Ledger Shredder looted away a Mental Misstep. Very interesting for this matchup, given the density of powerful 1-drops. Oh, I should probably stream ping this one, actually. Alright, we are going to see a Broadside Bombardiers cast. I imagine we're going to bounce that before it gets into combat. We sure are. Because if that's allowed to attack, it can throw the Ajani at either one of these threats and clear it, get in for 2 damage on its own. I don't imagine we're going to see an attack on either of these creatures. Arabella is attacking. Not sure what that means exactly. Could be that Abby doesn't realize Spider-Man has double strike. It could be a combat trick of some sort. It could just be swinging to gain the 2 life. Though, I don't see the desperation being quite there. And we are just going to see Arabella die. See an expressive iteration. Pretty great hit here. That's going to almost certainly trigger both the Ledger Shredder and Spider-Man from a exile cast here. Ooh, we're not gonna... right, no, Spider-Man does care about lands played from exile as well. So we're gonna see a Steam Vents hit the field here. And are we going to see a second spell? If it's one of the pump spells in this deck, it would be a little awkward, given that a Ajani has been left in play to block. We're going to see both attack, deal 2 with the Ledger Shredder, eat the Ajani with Spider-Man, and fling 2 more in the end step. See a Windswept Heath hit the field and cracked. Plateau entering. And a March on that Spider-Man. Very interesting timing on that. I wonder if that's largely to play around Ledger Shredder Connives. So normally you'd cast this either during their turn or in their upkeep against a blue deck to have them tap out mana on their turn. But if there's another instant that's wanting to be held up, that would help to explain that. Looks like there's some consideration on this one. Spider-Man is going to go into exile. Jump back into the command zone, and we're going to see Broadside Bombardiers come back down. That makes the March timing more interesting, because now it triggers the Ledger Shredder when you cast the Broadside. We're going to see a Inti dumped. Very interesting when Ledger Shredder's in play. That's a very powerful synergy. But we do have a 3-5. We're going to see Broadside get in for 2. And passing it back over to Kinggambit. We're going to see a Bolt going to be on the broadside. No, at face. That does make sense. If we see Spider-Man cast here, it can deal 2 to the broadside in the end step. And we're going to see the Lost and the Damned cast. This is a extremely powerful card if it gets going. We're going to see a Snapcaster hit the field, likely just throwing a lightning bolt back at this broadside. No, at face. But that's also going to trigger the Lost and the Damned for casting from graveyard. And we also saw the Ledger Shredder connive, dumping a Shivan Reef into the graveyard. Leaving Broadside in play to push damage is an interesting choice here. Obviously, dealing damage is how you eventually win, and the win con is to kill. But the board presence is large enough that that's not really a concern, I would think. We're going to see a Chain Lightning aimed at this spawn. That'll be deleted. See 5 tapped. Oh, for a Tempt with Vengeance. So this is a spell where Abbi will get to make 5 tapped 4 1/1 elementals with haste. Kinggambit may then choose to also make 4 of those elementals. But if they do, Abbi will get to make 4 more. So we're just going to see the decline on that. Broadside's going to chuck an elemental here at the Snapcaster. Powerful play, but it does look like Kinggambit has lethal just from either conniving with the Ledger Shredder or just casting Spider-Man, throwing 2 at face, dealing 3 with Ledger Shredder. We should also be seeing a Lost in the Damned trigger from Spider-Man. Yep. And that'll be game 1. Seeing the power of Ledger Shredder especially, keeping their hand full of good cards and keeping things flowing, as well as being just a huge creature. So sideboarding here, I expect we're going to see red blasts and blue blasts brought in. I could certainly see Spider-Man playing something, or Arabella playing something like Warmth, but that seems a bit unlikely. But something, one of those, like protection from red and black creatures, especially the one that's when a player casts a red spell, gain 1 life, that one could certainly be in that sideboard. That could certainly be pretty impactful. Given that Voice of Victory is in the main, I don't imagine there's going to be too much for actual counterspells, but I could see it, or at least beyond the red blasts. I don't know if Kinggambit would have too much in the sideboard for this past the 2 blasts, but it's certainly possible. Alright, jumping in. We're going to see Abbi here on the play for game 2. Alright, looks like both players are keeping 7. We're going to see Command Tower, Ocelot Pride. One of the more powerful 1-drops printed in MH3. Probably around 3rd or so. See a Misty Rainforest that could be holding up Lightning Bolt or some other 1-mana interactive spell. Take out this Ocelot Pride. It could also just be grabbing a Surveil land. It does appear like Ocelot Pride's connecting, which means it's going to make a cat. And we're going to see Arabella cast. This could be a Wash Away, could be a Stern Scolding, could be a Spell Snare. Could even be something like a Knoll. I think Wash Away. It is going to be Spell Snare. That one's not played too often, but especially in a deck like Is It Tempo, that's a powerful option. Ooh, and we're going to see a Mist land drop. Very interesting to keep a one-lander, no cantrips in a deck that at least wants to go out to turn 4. Not sure exactly what that means is in Kinggambit's hand, but Ocelot Pride also connecting. Doesn't bode super well. Let's see a Loyal Apprentice cast. Without the Arabella in play, this one isn't too scary, but it is still a haste creature. We're going to see a Lightning Bolt pointed at the Ocelot Pride. Seems like it was foregone last turn in order to stop the Arabella. We're going to see 3 damage sent in. And can we hit that second land drop? We can. We are now on turn 3 as well for Spider-Man. And we could see it as early as next turn. We're just going to see a pass, likely holding up some more interaction. Arid Mesa coming down. We could see a recast of Arabella. That would certainly be feasible here. But that does play into a counterspell pretty well. We're going to see 3 sent in. I wouldn't be shocked by holding up at least 1 mana. We're going to see an Anok Strike Leader. This one says, when you attack with this creature or your commander, for each opponent you make a goblin that's tapped and attacking. So it's a Rabble Master that can also sacrifice itself to give your creature tokens indestructible. We're going to see Blitz of the Thunder Raptor, which is going to deal damage equal to the number of instants and sorceries in your graveyard to a creature and exile it. It looks like Anok's going to pop in response, and there was 2 in graveyard to deal that damage. We're now going to see Spider-Man hit the field. I would not be surprised if Abbi is holding up Lightning Bolt, Plow, some other instant. Rending Volley will certainly do. To take out the Spider-Man without it gaining any value from that end-step trigger. See an Elegant Parlor fetched, likely looking for another threat. We could also just see an Arabella cast here. It does play into Daze, potentially, but given that that's a one-of, you don't play around it too often. We're going to see a Dalkovan Encampment hit the field. This is a fun utility land for this deck. It can make warrior tokens. That'll die at the end step, but Arabella doesn't mind that they die too much. And we are going to see Arabella hit the field, and it is going to resolve. See a Goblin Guide dropped as well. Between the Goblin Guide, Loyal Apprentice, Thopter it makes, and the Cat, we're going to see 6 damage coming in here. But let's see if Goblin Guide shows us a land, and it will. It seems like the only way Kinggambit would have out of this one would be something like Brotherhood's End. It sure will be. Something to just sweep up the board, keep things clear. And now we're going to see, even though it's 6 life, 6 cards in hand to Abbi's 1. And Dalkovan Encampment does need something to attack to make those 2 warriors, so it won't work on its own. With a Sunbaked Canyon played, we could just see Arabella recast for 6 mana. That does survive a Spider-Man trigger, so it doesn't lose to a land drop. Yeah, that was certainly a very strong Brotherhood's End. That's certainly going to keep Kinggambit in the game. A hand of something like Spell Snare, Lightning Bolt, Blitz, the Brotherhood's End, I could see it being kept as a one-lander. It's rolling the dice a little bit, but it certainly does make some sense. See Cutter, we're going to see a Flame Slash, make a Cutter token. We also see the 1 life from a Flooded Strand cracked, so we're going down to 5. Cutter's going to get in it with a 2/2 token. The cutter itself tapping. Arabella being sent to graveyard. That's very interesting. I think the only object in this deck that cares too much about that would be Flage. It sure is. So that's being sent to the graveyard just as free fodder. It can be exiled anyway. We're going to see Flage hit face, ignoring the token and just pushing damage. Makes a lot of sense. We're seeing iteration, and a Pyroblast on the iteration. That's an interesting choice. I would have guessed that we would have seen Pyroblast held up to protect the Flage cast, because if Kinggambit already has a... Oh, yep, and we're going to see that game end. Flage getting those last points over the line. Just pushing damage, and just pushing enough damage and while Kinggambit was stumbling on mana, and pushing with burn over the line after that Wrath. Looks like a little bit of... Yeah. No, for sure. It does function to stop finding a counterspell. Iteration there likely would have been put a counterspell in hand, put a land in exile. There's a good chance of that. I think one of the pinch points there, though, is the actual amount of mana Kinggambit has. Especially with a lot of the more played counterspells in this deck costing 2 mana. Things like Lose Focus, Counterspell itself, Mana Drain. I would have guessed that we would have seen the fight there. But especially with having 11 cards in Graveyard, that's enough to cast Flage twice. Taking out the card advantage spell to stop the banking of counterspells does make some sense. See a River Pyre Verge. Here on Kinggambit's side, dropping of a Goblin Guide over for Abbi. Looks like it is making it into combat, as it always should. And we're going to see the bolt on it after. Yeah, when playing against Goblin Guide, you should let it attack, see if it draws you a card before you kill it. We're going to see that Summon Brynhilder played. That'll let Kinggambit play the Quarry Steelcutter for his until their next turn. And whenever you cast a creature spell this turn, it gains haste until end of turn. So for the next 2 turns, all of Kinggambit's creatures will have haste. If it survives, of course. Oh, yes, during any turn you put a lore counter on it. Yep. We're going to see a Celestial Purge, exile target black or red permanent, take out the Brynhilder, take out the Cutter. Yeah, I've not played with Summon Brynhilder in a while. Yeah. I think I've seen it in Vintage Cube at some point. That's one of the nice things about this format, is that just random rares will pop up. We're going to see Sky Knight Vanguard cast. This is just a 2-mana flying 1/2. When it attacks, it gets to make a soldier that's tapped and attacking. We see Opera Love Song hit. Reality Shift is in this deck. Very interesting. That's just a more generic removal spell to exile a creature, and it lets them manifest the top card of their library. Not one you see much here, but certainly an option. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, it seems largely for Barogoi, Flage, Uro, those sorts of things. But we're going to see Lost in the Damned hit, Ghostfire Slice the Vanguard, get a spawn, losing the Reality Shift, see a crack for a Surveil land. But with this Lost in the Damned getting... Yep. With this Lost in the Damned in play, there's a very real clock on Abbi. If a red blast isn't seen here for that, or some other way to destroy it, that card might run away with this game. We're gonna see an Arabella cast and a Dranith Magistrate. Very interesting. Yeah. Yeah, Dranith is going to be a very good card for this matchup. But we are just going to see it Blitz of the Thunder Dragon for 3. Taking that one out of the game fully. Get that Spider-Man down. Make a spawn. Swing in for 3 with the original spawn. Yep. And then end of turn, fling 2 with the Spider-Man. Send it over. Yeah, that Blitz of the Thunder Raptor is going to be pretty huge here. Four mana, that's March of the Otherworldly Light. Yep, gotta get that Lost in the Damned off board, but it has already made 2 spawns and eaten a full turn. And then we're going to see a Blue Blast on Arabella. We get to see an attack here for 10. If any spells can be played from exile, or any pump spells are hit, or any bolts, that would be lethal. We are going to see the attack here. And now we'll see if Kinggambit got a good one. Looks like it's not. Could be a counterspell here. That would be one of the cards drawn but not played. Could also be a land to bluff a counterspell. Yeah. Yep. Yeah, Zikron, we're here on game 3. Both players are 1-1. It's looking like this one's going to end pretty soon if Abbi can't find something very special. Yep, and that'll be game. We're seeing Spider-Man move on. One of the... Yeah, very likely. Spider-Punk is reasonably playable, and I know that Cosmarian especially has been testing around with a couple other ones, but Spider-Man is certainly the one that is the breakout of the set for this format. Oh yes, that one that's a selfless spirit type thing. Yeah, that one seems fine. Yeah, Heroes Hangout, the red sleight of hand, also has some potential. But, yeah, Spider-Man 2099. Dealing some real damage, winning some games, taking out some creatures. It's getting there. Alright, Cool. Yep, I don't believe we have any more stream games for today. At least none set up right now. Thank y'all for watching. Y'all have a good one.